Hello there, my name is Jack Pearson, and I will be talking about my research symposium poster. The title of my poster is The Role of Carbon Pricing in Achieving Climate Goals. So really what carbon pricing is pricing in pollution and then funding climate action. So we want to price in pollutionary measures and emissions so that we can then fund projects that will reduce overall emissions in the global economy. So I'm going to go over the sections that I have quite quickly here. There's two different types of carbon pricing strategies that I go into. Carbon markets, which are cap and trade systems, which essentially, if you can see this graph here, they set a cap on the total amount of emissions that you can have and then create tradable allowances that companies can then trade between each other for those remaining emissions. And then the carbon tax as well, which essentially sets a tax on all emissions that are emitted above a certain cap. And it basically just incentivizes lower emissions because it is now more costly to emit. So companies will have to be forced to reduce total emissions. Over here on the left, I just talk about some history of the carbon markets. I really focused on pulling just the history of markets in general and different carbon trading. There's been economists that have been talking about negative externality and pollution pricing for upwards of a century. But the first examples of carbon trading systems or carbon markets really started right at the turn of the century in 1997 with the Kyoto Protocol. So I talk a little bit about different examples of this in history, which is quite interesting. It's quite a new industry and quite a new market. I talk a little bit about the future, which is quite interesting with some blockchain technologies, as well as there's going to be a lot of investments to meet these net zero targets that we talk about. And then there's a couple of different types of carbon markets, so regulatory and voluntary carbon market that I get into a little bit with the types of credits that are offered, which can be quite interesting, as well as some of the innovations and technologies that have come out from these markets, whether that be direct carbon dioxide removal technologies or just energy innovations with renewable energies, which is quite interesting. Global impacts. I talk a little bit about some of the agreements and cooperation between countries that's going to be needed to work with these carbon pricing initiatives. And then I go in a little bit to the benefits of carbon pricing. So the social cost of carbon is something that's extremely important. So basically the numerical cost of emitting, it's represented by this idea of the social cost of carbon, which is essentially just taking the net present value of the benefits and the costs over the social discount rate over time. And then the tragedy of the commons, which is an economic concept, essentially saying, if people have free and unwavered access to an open resource, they will use more than they need. Out of fear of other people doing the same, and with the environment and the planet being an open resource that is not measured by any governing body, people are doing that, as we can see with global temperature rise. And then I talk a little bit about net zero targets and decarbonization, which is something that we've all been talking about. Pitt is going to be net zero by 2030, so it's quite interesting to see how these goals are going to play into and how carbon pricing can play into reaching these goals. I give a couple of highlights to some valid critiques to the markets. So carbon leakage is one, and then distributional equity of revenues is another, which are quite important to be conscious of with social impacts of carbon and these projects that are going to be created. Then I give sort of my idea for the path forward. So I really think that a key thing is reducing emissions to their bare bones level, and then using these carbon pricing strategies and carbon markets to offset the remaining amount. So it's really about progress towards reducing emissions in supply chains, in value chains all over, and then using these pricing strategies to price in that remaining amount that may not be able to be avoided through just reductions in processes. And then I give a little conclusion on where I think the carbon market is and where it's going to go. And a powerful quote that I'll highlight in this video as well is, you can't manage what you can't measure. So it's really important to measure global emissions, as we can't manage them if we don't really know what everyone is doing. And something that's been great is the SEC just passed on March 6th that some climate disclosure laws for all publicly traded companies. So it's going to be exciting to see how that impacts investment decisions and in the future. So finally, down here I have a little QR code to scan and calculate your individual footprint. So this just will allow people to check out the website and calculate their individual carbon footprint, and then be connected with some cool solutions to offset that or reduce that. So that is my poster. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'm really excited to present in the research symposium. Thank you. Have a great rest of your day.